So I'm out here in front of the White House as part of the 100 Days campaign. Uh, and I have with me Sister Anne Montgomery, who has been very much Catholic nun, very much a part of the peace movement for many, many years, and many different actions. And today she is here with us in front of the White House. I should say that Sister Anne also accompanied us on our visit to Cuba back in 2005, and our great hope was to then visit the prisoners at Guantanamo. And we were denied that, although we did get up to the final Cuban checkpoint before Guantanamo and spent 5 days there fasting and praying, kept a 24-hour prayer vigil in the direction of the base. At night we could see the base. We are still concerned about the prisoners at Guantanamo, and wanted to ask Sister Anne for any of her sort of reflections on the day. So, Sister Anne Montgomery.
Yes, I think the walk to Guantanamo was a transforming experience for us as a group, as we realized that these prisoners have been held for years without trial, many of them tortured, living in unspeakable conditions. And on my mind at that same time were the hostages taken from the Christian peacemaker teams in Iraq by some small group. We just still don't know for what exact purpose. There was one American with them. He was the only one who was not released in the end, who was shot to death. And on that walk, we were very aware of the fact that before the release or death happened, there were deadlines, about 3 deadlines. If you don't do such and such, release all the women in jail in Iraq. These men will be killed. And at every moment when this deadline came up, according to our time, on the walk we stopped, we prayed for those men that they would be saved. In the end, they were, except for Tom Fox, a Quaker, who once upon a time been in the Marine Band, and perhaps the fact that he was the only American among the 4 was the one who was selected for death. And I was thinking of the connection between that and the fact that there are so many people in the world that look upon us as the empire that is oppressing them. That's why hostages are taken, sometimes, of course, for money. But the feeling that you get in the Middle East now is that more and more people are seeing us allied with the powers of oppression and death. In wars that go on and on, wars and so-called terrorism, which can never, of course, solve the problem. And I was in Iraq, too, myself, during the time when we kept prisoners at Abu Ghraib. At that time, in '93, we didn't know of all the abuses there, but we did know of the abuses of the men who were transported from one detention center to another. Some of them treated decently, but many either beaten or abused in other ways, without water or food, tied up, and in transit from one place to another in Iraq. We heard their stories from the families who were finally allowed to visit them, but also from some of the men themselves who had been taken innocent. It took a long time to find out they were innocent without a hearing, like the prisoners in Guantanamo, and finally were released. These stories horrified us. We documented them and published them to as many people as we could, including our own media and government people, but got no real response until the Abu Ghraib scandal came out, and then, of course, there was a response. So, this abuse goes on and on. It seems to belong to our history, that some attack against us, some real terrorist attack, can cause many, many innocents to be tortured, to be killed, either in the war itself or in prison. And so I am very aware of the connection between these people whom I've met, the people on the ground, our own hostages, the wonderful people who live in poverty and without much electricity in Iraq to this day. I came back from there in the fall to Kurdistan, and even there, where things are better than they were in Baghdad, there's not electricity for most of the day. So these are all things that build up to make people aware that we really didn't come to liberate them so much as to control the resources and power struggle in the Middle East. And so we just are trying to make small steps now for these men held for years in Guantanamo most of them without trial, without charges, and looking not to an immediate release, but to at best a year release under the Obama administration. And we pray and beg that they may be, if they have charges brought, they may have a fair trial, and like people under our own laws, be heard, have evidence brought, and then released if they're free, and serve their time if they're not innocent. So that's why we're here today, and that's why we will stay here until something happens during these 100 days.
Man, can I just ask you, it's been a long time, a lot of actions on the issue of Guantanamo, coercive interrogations, on the issue of all the difficulties that confront the world and the United States still taking a posture of domination. Are you any more hopeful that genuine change can come about?
I am hopeful that change will come about, but I think it has to come from the bottom. And the lawyers who visited the prisoners at Guantanamo, done so much wonderful legal work for them, say the same thing. We need people in the streets. And so if we're a democracy, people in the streets should make a difference. That's what we're supposed to be, the government, not just the politicians. So I think that many people are too distracted by, the instant visions on TV and so forth, by buying and shopping, and of course by the terrible economic situation, that a peace movement that's strong enough has not gotten itself together yet to force the issue as it did during the civil rights movement, during the suffrage movement, during the fall of the wall in Berlin, where it wasn't a democracy. It can happen, it must happen, and I think that, I'm a Catholic, I'm a nun, and I firmly believe that the power of love, the power of grace is stronger than death. That you can't solve anything militarily. It has to be solved with the means that we want to see used for the rest of civilization. The means of getting along with each other, humanity, of negotiations, of respect for the other person's humanity, which is not happening in places like Guantanamo, and to our own soldiers who are being abused, traumatized, just by the actions they're forced to take.